Okay, so let's get started with today's session. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And today we're going to cover what we're calling the faculty persona study. And so we're using this to really think about the different types of faculty that we work with and how you're better able to meet them where they are. First of all, I want to preface that we're not saying that these 6 personae that we're sharing today are locked in buckets or personality types or individual types. People are certainly across personae, but we're going to be looking at what our data revealed us and these categories, and then how you might reflect on those categories in the work that you do to support faculty excellence. So let's go ahead and jump in from there. I'll introduce myself briefly. Brett Christie, and I'm VP for Learning Design and Inclusivity at O'Donnell Learn plus ISG. I've been in this role about 2.5 years. Prior to that, I was in the Cal State system for 25 years, doing work as faculty and as faculty developer at the campus level and system level, and just have had a lifelong commitment to trying to impact teaching and learning excellence, student success, equity, inclusive, humanized practice, all those great things. I'll stop there and I'll turn it over to Carrie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie O'Donnell. Brett and I are joined at the hip in these webinars and conferences. And I'm really thrilled. I'm the CEO and founder of O'Donnell Learn plus ISG. Started the company 30 years ago when I was a mere babe. And we for many years were learning design support for higher ed. And a few years ago, we really saw a need for better resources and support for faculty, because we really felt that blended learning and hybrid learning was coming down the pike, and that faculty needed to be supported in new methods and modalities for delivering learning. And so we've been very much focused on that. For many years, we did a lot of market research for our clients, and we really turn that lens on ourselves and do quite a lot of market research as a company. We really want to hear the voice of our partners and users and customers and our audience and market. And so we're really thrilled, and Brett's going to talk, I'm going to turn it back to Brett to talk about the study, but we're really thrilled to present this study. And some of you saw the burnout side of this, the first piece of it. So back to Brett.
Great, thanks, Carrie. And now that we've kind of got everybody settled in, just a couple logistical things. So please use the chat throughout and make sure it's selected to send to everyone. And we want to be able to get comments from you, feedback from you, any thoughts that you have, and be able to respond to those and engage with you. And we have myself, Carrie, and some others that can do that as well. And also peer-to-peer. So make this about yourselves a little bit as well. That's what it's all about. Let's see. Also, we will be sharing the report to you after the fact. You'll automatically get the report. You'll get the slides. You'll get the webinar. So if something goes too quickly, you didn't get something jotted down, don't worry about it. We got you covered. Just kind of sit back and relax and engage. And we will be using a couple of different engagement tools along the way as well. Nothing too complicated. All right, so a little bit about the study. So this is from fall 2022, very recent. We surveyed 530 faculty, and these are across full-time and part-time positions, 4-year, 2-year, public, private, R1, all different types of institutions. And then the themes that we saw that came up, that we focused on, I should say, is approach to their course design and teaching, how they spend their time working, and then their values and attitudes toward their job. And then to understand the 6 personae we explored, we looked at what they value about interacting with students, what they value about their role as an expert and academic, how they prefer to teach and in which formats, their approach to engaging students, their feelings of burnout and time for extra aspects of their job, their enjoyment of connecting with colleagues, and their connectedness to campus life. And again, we analyzed the data. The data told us a story. We got these 6 personae you'll see today, but again, these aren't fixed buckets, and we're not trying to generalize or label people. We're just trying to better understand what it is that people do, how they do it, how they prefer to do it, what are the different types, and then how they can be best supported. What are the different approaches that can be taken? Okay. So let's do a quick to think about how you would approach faculty personae. Which terms would come to mind when you hear faculty personae? Thinking of different types of faculty, how they engage through their role. What are the different terms that come to mind? So we've got the link in the chat. So go ahead and join us at Answer Garden. You'll enter one term at a time, and you can enter as many as possible. And we'll just get a quick little group think here. And I'll repopulate that as we go. Hit refresh. Resilient for sure, especially lately. And yes, we want people to be resilient, but there's a limit, there's a breaking point. How do we provide care rather than just leaning into resiliency? But that is critical. So I'll keep refreshing here. And yeah, please in the chat.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, chat is fine as well. If Answer Garden doesn't do it for you. Dedicated by far stands out. Love how that's recognized. Yeah. And we can say that across the personae for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Guide on the side. Okay, good. So that's flipping it from being the total expert, lecture, to being more of the facilitator, the guide on the side. I like that. Resistant to change. So there's resiliency, maybe dealing with a lot of change and coping, but there's also resistance. Sometimes you have to put up that resistance for better or worse. There can be that resistance to change. And that can come based on levels of burnout. You're going to resist for survival. All right, here we get a few new ones popping in. Flexible, committed. I love that, committed. Yeah, faculty are so committed, so passionate about what they do. And they're all there for their students. We know that.
Yeah, this is good. These are very good characteristics of faculty. It's interesting because you'll see when we start to look at what are the distinguishing characteristics of different faculty persona, some of this that's up here really crosses everyone. I mean, really, you have to be dedicated to be a faculty member because for so many reasons, but just getting the graduate degrees you need requires a huge amount of commitment and dedication, right? So, and it also includes a lot of focus, which can sometimes translate into resistance to change, right? So.
Yeah, and just looking at, and we'll jump from the Answer Garden and go back to the flow of the session again, but thank you for submitting all of those. That's great. And then also in the chat, I see demoralized. That one, I mean, I saw that word and it literally touched my heart in a sad way because I know morale is a big issue. And so how do we try and repair morale when people are demoralized? How do we give better care and help revitalize their joy and support them? So let's bring that into the conversation as well. Okay, so let me go ahead and go back to our slides and let's jump into the flow here. Okay, so Carrie?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with just a few slides on the overall of what we learned in this study. Now, some of you were at our previous various sessions that we've had in various places on burnt out and overburden, where we looked at the general study overall, and we spent, and what happened is we dug in here more on some of the attitude questions. So Brett mentioned that we asked a lot of questions about attitudes and what people, their beliefs and values and what they enjoy about their job. And we asked about 19 attitude questions agreement on and about 16 on what they enjoy on their job. And those ended up being factors that we used to be able to see very clearly, we could see very differentiating persona based on statistically how they answered these questions. But here are some of the questions that really came out very strongly that the majority of faculty felt and about their job. And so the biggest two that came out were that faculty love that light bulb moment when the student grasps a new concept, and faculty highly value their academic freedom. That's the large majority. But a lot of the things, the questions that faculty resounded around that there was a lot of agreement on had to do with students. So they value engaging with students in their classes. They're concerned with students that they don't arrive with the basic skills they need. And they're excited when students get a great job offer or get into a graduate program. Now, the other thing that has come out in other parts of this study in the earlier study, the burnout study, was that 2/3 of faculty teach across multiple formats: online, hybrid, online synchronous, online asynchronous, face-to-face, of course, web enhanced. And so and 39% teach in 3 or more formats. So that's a lot of faculty teaching in a lot of different formats. Half of educators feel burnt out right now. They agreed with the statement amongst a series of statements that they agreed or strongly agreed that they feel burnt out in today. And then most rarely or never utilize campus support resources for health and well-being. And most don't use the resources, not the majority use the resources for teaching and learning as well. So just a couple of little things about faculty also that came out. 55% of faculty believe they don't have enough time to do everything they need to do to teach their courses effectively in today's environment. Yet they spend an awful lot of time preparing to teach their courses. So we asked them questions about how much time they spend planning and preparing for their courses. And pre-semester, the first time a faculty member teaches a course, on average, they spend 38 hours. And if they've taught the course previously, 14 hours. But this is the one that really got us. Faculty spend 7 hours per course per week preparing, and this is not grading or in class face-to-face time with people. This is just preparing, getting ready to teach. And then we ask them how they spend that time. And maybe we could advance that, Brett. So if you look at how they spend their time preparing to teach, creating content modules, creating content, creating assessments, preparing for lectures, which is content, keeping content fresh and updated, curating resources and materials, which is content. So this was an open-ended question. This was the vast majority of responses, that faculty spend most of their prep time creating content for their courses. Yet we also asked them, what is the single most effective thing you can do to create an effective learning experience for your students? And the answers didn't have content in them. They were all about engagement, create more student connectedness, to create engaged learning, to engage learners, accessibility, set expectations for the students, care for the students. These, we see here a pretty big gap between the time that faculty are spent preparing for class and what they value in terms of the most effective student experience. And that crosses all of the personae. And I just wanted to kind of set the stage by showing that there are a lot of things that faculty, and this is what came up in your answer garden, right? You know, their commitment, dedication, their caring, that's all there. So now within that, let's meet the personae.
All right.
Forgot to tell you about the study. Go, Brett.
Okay. Yeah. So for those of you who weren't able to attend our recent session where we did focus more on faculty burnout and talked about solutions, we have a report focusing on, it's called Burnt Out and Overburdened, as you can see. We've got the QR code, and also you can see the link is in the chat now if you wanted to access that report that focuses on the aspects of burnout, causes of burnout, and then talks about some of the solutions. And so we'll talk about at the end how this is part of a continuum that we're doing. Okay, so getting into the personae. So here are the 6 resulting personae that came through the results that we saw in analyzing the data. So you've got tenured or tenure track, you've got the expert, you've got the student advocate, and this is a good time to say everybody is working hard for students, but this is somebody who's really that champion, that student advocate. That is by far the #1 thing. And then there's the autonomist, there's the adjunct, and then there's the burnt out. So those are the 6 faculty personae that we'll cover today, and some of their unique characteristics and how that relates to the work that they do, and then what can be done in trying to support within each of those personae. And also there are things that could be done across as well. So let's look at the first one, the tenure or tenure track. And what we're going to do here is meet Dwayne. And I'm actually going to just read briefly a little bit about Dwayne. So Dwayne is a full-time tenured professor with a PhD in world history. He's 43 years old and has been teaching with this institution for 15 years. Dwayne teaches 7 courses each year, primarily in the classroom where he feels the most confident. He also teaches 1 or 2 courses online each year, but feels less practiced in creating and delivering these courses than he does with his in-person classes. He enjoys seeing his students succeed and celebrates with them when they get a good job offer in their field. He's laser focused on the scholarly elements of his job, including researching, publishing papers, and expanding his knowledge. As a seasoned professor, he enjoys participating in campus life and talking with colleagues about his area of expertise. He also appreciates opportunities to attend conferences, present his research, and network with others in his field. So there's just a snapshot about the persona of the tenure track, and we're just labeling this Dwayne just to have some characters here with each of these. So that's one persona there. And then some of the factors that we saw affecting Dwayne's experience. So highly values research and scholarly work, really leans into the autonomy aspect of some of those things, does reasonably enjoy interacting with colleagues on campus, enjoys, again, seeing students get a good job offer in their field, or we also saw getting into a graduate program similarly in that category, and then that travel in his role. And so you can see the comparison there between the tenure track folks and the non-tenure track folks and what they told us. And so that helped to kind of inform this persona a little bit. Okay, and then some ideas for supporting somebody who's in this type of persona. So help Dwayne save time as he prepares to teach. And that's something that we've been really leaning into is methods for saving time, doing things more efficiently and effectively at the same time. And so we've created a lot of great resources. We call them optimizers, and that's something we would share in a different session. Help him use low stakes, frequent formative assessments. Help him advocate campus student support resources. So sometimes faculty aren't sure how to advocate for student support. So how can you help somebody like Dwayne be able to do that and make that known for his students? Empower him to iterate his courses so that it's not always about big overhauls, but how to make those good changes step by step going forward in reasonable amounts of time. And then how can he enable students to meet his high standards and outcomes? So maybe looking at better outcomes assessment alignment could be one, or more transparency could be another thing. Okay. And feel free if you have any other comments on something related to this persona of the tenure track faculty and some of the things we've mentioned, you feel free to share those in the chat.
Yeah, we'd love to hear in chat if there are areas where you feel like, wow, we've really got like the personality of the tenure track based on our study, or where you see differentials. We'd love to hear that. So I'm going to talk about hard to find time. Yeah, Maria, that's what I was going to say when Brett was talking about some of the supports, like this time savings. Really, the reason we really think that that's very important for the tenure and tenure track is because they have a lot of obligations to research and write as well. So spending all that time on their teaching, if there are ways that we can find them, enable them to spend it more efficiently, efficient and effectively, that'd be great. So I'm going to take the next persona is Christine, I'm sorry. And Christine is the expert. Now we know that faculty are experts, right? In order to become a college faculty member, you have to have at least a master's, but majority of have a PhD. And so that's key. But Christine differs from others in her the enjoyment and importance she placed on that aspect of her professional life. So Christine is a tenured professor at a respected research university. She has a PhD in developmental biology, and she loves the prestige of being an expert in her field. Her favorite aspects of her job are interacting with colleagues, engaging in research, and traveling to conferences where she networks with other biologists. She is rarely found interacting with colleagues or students at events and social activities around campus. Instead, she is more likely to spend her time investing in scholarly work and expanding her expertise. Christine teaches 6 courses per year, both online and in person. Her online courses tend to mirror her face-to-face courses, and she tends to spend less time in course preparation than her colleagues do. She's more likely to build her course around student research projects rather than hands-on learning experiences, and she highly values her autonomy and the freedom to teach her courses how she sees best. So some of the factors that, does Christine seem familiar to you? Do you know Christine's in your school and your in your environment? I suspect you do. If we can move on to the next one, the factors, Brett.
Yeah.
So you can see here in the research how she differs pretty greatly from non-experts from others in her emphasis she placed on her own autonomy, her research and scholarly work. Academic freedom is highly important to her more than most. But there's a big difference about updating her expertise in her field, 55% of Christine's versus 24% otherwise. That's of high value. And her opportunities to travel, to go to conferences, meet other colleagues, and the prestige of being a college educator. So that's how we can tell, we see Christine, how she differs from others in our panel. So let's talk about how we might support Christine. So because, if we can move on. So given that Christine leans in on her expertise and, for example, mirroring her face-to-face course, she likely relies more heavily than most on delivering content and prepping her course with content. So as a supporter of Christine, what I would want to focus on is helping Christine increase her engagement with her students. So emphasize chunking lectures and interweaving active learning and give her support and tools and resources to do that. We help her create authentic learning opportunities. Although student research is very much of a high impact practice, so that's a good thing for her to lean in on. But maybe students today like need the authentic so that they can see the connectivity to their future life. Encourage her in the scholarship of teaching and learning through a faculty learning community. This might be a way that she can engage with colleagues on campus and not just colleagues within her, but in addition to colleagues in her field of expertise across the country. And also support her to involve students in her own undergraduate research or other undergraduate research, which is another high impact practice. So that's how I would support Christine, or we would support Christine. Let's meet our next person, Brett.
Seen some nice comments in the chat as well that we can try and get to. Thank you, folks. So yeah, let's look at number 3, our student advocate. Again, we're all there for our students, but this is somebody who it's their true passion, their true north, if you will. So Linda's more focused on.
Brett?
Yes.
Brett, before you jump in, is the expert more research focused where the tenured faculty is more teaching focused? Not clear on the differences here. I just wanted to address that really quickly.
Great.
Now, there are a lot of similarities between your tenure track faculty and your expert, but what we did find is that the tenure faculty is more engaged on the campus, not necessarily more teaching focused, but they may lean in a little less on their expertise in their teaching. And they're definitely more engaged in campus and campus colleagues on campus and students on campus and connecting with students in a group. So those are the types of things that the tenure are more focused than the expert being more focused on their field of study and less on what's happening on campus. Back to Brett. Sorry, Brett, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. Good to do it while it's in the moment. Thanks, Carrie. Because we've got other comments coming, and keep them coming, please. And we'll do these pauses and try and get to them and share across each other as well. So a bit about our student advocate. So Linda's more focused on students than her peers in several ways. She's significantly more likely to derive enjoyment from the light bulb moment when a student grasps a lesson, interacting with students in a group setting, lecturing to inspire students, and seeing a student get a good job offer or get into grad programs. She's deeply invested in her student success, and she spends many hours ensuring that her classes are both academically rigorous and engaging. Linda wants to prepare her students for professional life after college, but feels that many of them do not arrive with the skills they need to succeed in the college environment. She experiences the same pressures as many of her peers and often feels that she doesn't have time to do everything that needs to be done. She teaches 7 courses per year in a variety of formats and is committed to providing an effective student experience both in person and in the online environment. And when I visualize a Linda, I kind of visualize the one who students sort of follow around, around the department or around the campus, and they kind of seek her out at different places to be able to seek her counsel and support and guidance. So that's just a snapshot of what I had covered a moment ago. So let me go ahead and go forward. So let's look at some of the things that the data told us. So would like to receive more relevant info from the student eval process. We heard that in a few different ways, that the student evaluation process really wasn't informing instructors as to how they could do their jobs better. And I know there's that tension with the student eval process as it needs to be done for collective bargaining and other agreements as far as the personnel process and what could be done to better inform teaching and learning, that teaching process. And so we've got some ideas that we can share for sure that are in our report. And we'll get to that actually in just a moment. Does not feel aligned with student expectations concerning grades. And so again, talking about alignment, transparency, how to be able to align all of that better. Feels less confident at administering effective assessments. And, as becoming instructors and experts in your field, we're not often taught how to do effective assessments. And so we might rely on publishers' assessments or different things like that. And they might be these high stakes multiple choice exams. So how to do different types of assessments and administer those effectively and also give feedback. She feels less confident interacting with students in an online format. And that's something that so many people are doing nowadays, but are very new to, and they don't necessarily know how to do things differently than their on-ground or traditional course formats, and that those need to be distinctly different. So how to work with Linda on that. Okay. So some of the things to support the student advocate is how could Linda clearly communicate course outcomes and align them to assessments? That can be done in a written format, could even be done by visually mapping those things together and giving students a picture of how everything connects. Help her using those low stakes assessment early and often to align those expectations, and also let students know early on how they're doing. And she can do that check-in as well. If she's concerned how prepared they are coming into the class, that's an early indicator by using some of those low stakes assessments early on. Make sure that her chair or dean checks on Linda's well-being and follows up. Our research showed us that most people had not been asked about their well-being, and those that had been asked, there was no follow-up about that. It was sort of, how you doing? There wasn't this effort to really take care. Support her to find teaching success across multiple modalities. So being able to progressively give Linda different tools and techniques and the understanding of how teaching and learning can happen more effectively in different types of modalities. Increase her confidence and effectiveness teaching online, and then provide her with ways to incorporate student input in the design and delivery of selected course elements. We had a session a couple months back, great session on areas where you can involve student input on, let's say, your syllabus elements and even some of the procedures in your class or some of the assessments, or things that you wouldn't have students give input on and you wouldn't change and you completely control. So there is that give and take that you can do as well if you're a student advocate. Okay, so moving on from the persona there, and I'll do a look at the chat. Anything of note that popped up, Carrie?
No. I wasn't reading it. Sorry, Brett.
That's okay.
Let's just take a quick look. I should have been. Yeah, thinking of how number 3 advocate can lead from number 6 burnout. Jillian, I couldn't agree with you more about that. And let's come into that in the conversation, because I think, one thing we did see is that there definitely are some of these are phases in your career, and some of these are what you are that you can be more than one persona. So and interestingly enough, definitely you saw that the student advocate and the burnt out faculty tend to be women more than men, and in their mid-career. And so that can totally, these are people that are oftentimes juggling family as well as other things, and also at a point in their career where they're very heavily tapped for service opportunities on campus. So I can see why, how one could lead to another. Any other thoughts, Brett?
I'm sorry, I was focusing on Sally's and starting to reply to Sally there. The one who's most interested in helping students as a priority seems to be the one with the least confidence, maybe feeling that their priorities, doesn't feel their priorities are valued by their department or colleagues. Yeah, there's that tension for sure. And if you feel like you're not valued, then it's going to certainly make you doubt what you're doing and how well you're doing it. So absolutely. And I see Jillian's follow up, I think, to Sally as well.
So let's move on to the autonomist. So meet Michael. Maybe the next screen. So Michael is a full-time tenured professor in the physics department at a large research institution. He loves the academic rigor of teaching and is devoted to his subject. He teaches 6 courses, all online, and prefers the asynchronous online format because it gives him more flexibility. Excuse me, a little cold, a little allergy. Michael has high expectations for his students, but doesn't always feel he has the freedom to teach and develop courses the way he deems best. Despite 15 years as a college professor, he struggles to connect with his peers and his students, both inside and outside the classroom. And his students often perceive him to be distant. For this reason, he is not always aligned with student expectations and feels that his institution makes it challenging for him to help students prepare for life after college. He is less likely to enjoy interacting with colleagues and students around campus and can usually be found in his office or in the lab. Do we know some Michaels? So let's look at the factors that affect Michael's experience. So where we really found the differential between Michael and other colleagues is he's really less likely to enjoy interacting with colleagues on campus and with students in a group. And he also responded that he struggles to connect with peers and struggles to connect with students. So the autonomist, statistically, the autonomous personality is really all about connectivity and connecting with others. And, it's so important to be, if we can move on to the next, it's so important to be as a faculty member to have connectivity with your students and connectedness, and also to some extent to be connected on campus. So what we think we do when we support Michael is to provide efficient ways to drive connectivity and make it so that it's not so out of his comfort zone. Help him humanize his course. So for example, when we support faculty members that are the high autonomist qualities, we help them create passion statements about their course to present to their students, and oftentimes videos. Like here's why I teach this. This is why I believe in this. This is why this is important to me. And what we find is that when they start to connect and humanize with students that way, then we start to see them doing things like putting a video at the beginning of the week and saying, here's what we're going to be doing this week, and here's why it's so important, and this is what this is why I'm passionate about this area of study, or why it's really important to you. We help Michael provide resources for gathering student feedback so he can connect better, enable him to elevate his asynchronous courses for student-to-student engagement. So help him with peer learning experiences and more group learning and peer-to-peer learning, and so that students can connect in his class, because he's probably not focusing so much on that. Help him develop authentic learning activities. If he believes that students aren't prepared for life after college, then he can benefit by creating authentic learning activities, and also enable him to be a change agent in his department or in campus for authentic learning, and help him to share out his authentic learning with others and get them involved in preparing students by providing that kind of opportunity. So that's Michael. Any comments or thoughts?
I'm looking at one from Matt. Do you think it's possible that there's a connection between the limited joy they get and the comfort/frequency with which they connect? And I'm just thinking, if somebody's not comfortable, doesn't feel like they have the tool set or that comfort level to make those connections, then yeah, it's not going to be as joyful. They're going to struggle. They're going to be uncomfortable. And I think that could cause them to kind of, step back and hold back a little bit. I see that as one thing. And one thing that I saw just personally related to the autonomous, it made me think of introverts, and not to forget the power of introverts, and that they may in some ways work in a different way than we expect people to, as far as being more outwardly going and loud and in charge and all those things, but they're still doing great work. How can you recognize and enable that? And so these are some things to help with that comfort level, whatever the source may be, for sure.
Great. Yeah, and the reason I meant, a couple of you mentioned passion videos and statements. The reason I mention it is because we've seen it be really transformative, especially for that kind of introverted, sometimes a STEM professor who tends to just lecture in video, particularly if they're teaching asynchronously and they want to just do these 50-minute lectures and that's their comfort zone. But when they actually get out of that comfort zone and talk about their passion, they really get engaged in that, and so do the students, obviously. So let's keep going.
Yeah, great comments on the passion statements. I see more down below. It is really just a great gateway to opening up that human connection. All right. So let's look at the adjunct a little bit here, persona 5, and let's meet Henry. So Henry began his career in the corporate world and spent 20 years as the CEO of his own software company. And after a fulfilling and successful career, he retired early and now enjoys sharing his expertise in the classroom. He teaches 4 classes each year as an adjunct professor at his local state university, and also occasionally teaches courses at a local community college. So multiple institutions often for this adjunct role, especially in dense urban areas, these freeway flyers. Henry loves interacting with his students and getting to know them as people. He wants all of his students to find value in his classes and prioritize inclusive teaching practices and live discussions for his online courses. He's also involved in the school's entrepreneurship program and has helped many of his students find internships or jobs after college. So there's just the bulletized version, if you will, for reference. You'll have access to that. But let's go ahead and look at some of the factors that we saw. So connecting with students on a human level that thoughtfully personalizes the experience. So for this adjunct role, that was much higher than for non-adjunct. Fostering a universal sense of belonging and connection through inclusive and equitable teaching. That stood out for sure. Henry, is somebody who in that role 20 years and eventually becoming a CEO has probably seen what it's like to start from the beginning and work your way up, and is looking for creating opportunities for other students. Creating practical, useful homework assignments, does not find this difficult. This is somebody who lived authentic learning for their career. They don't see the gap from their perspective between the college experience and the real world experience, because they're doing it on both sides. So this adjunct role can be really important and empowered in some of these ways, but we often find that the adjunct role will struggle because of certain factors on the campus. So let's go ahead and look at some of those ideas.
Before you do that, Brad, can I make a few comments? Yep. One is just that adjuncts are not all, just like full-time instructors are not all the same, adjuncts are not all the same. We found in the study that there was a good portion of adjuncts that were like Henry, they're either second career or they do it on the side from their other careers, and they're kind of, they're expert adjuncts, right? There also was a subsegment of PhD or a master's degree adjuncts. And so we chose on this persona to focus on Henry, who's the expert adjunct, mostly just because we had a few more of him. So also, I just wanted to address the comment before Kristen's comment that only 20% of community college instructors have a PhD. And I just wanted you to know that we will be in the next iteration, we will look at community college versus four-year public research and four-year private. So keep going, Brad. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Carrie. No. This is team. Okay, so first thing is invest in Henry's success, which equals student success. You know, I hear this, I've heard this when I've been on campuses, and I heard this recently in a conference I won't name, but sometimes campuses don't invest in adjuncts. They see it as a transient population. There's not good ROI in giving them support money. And that's, to me, awful in many ways. But the bottom line is, if you are supporting these folks, they are instructors. Bottom line is they are instructors. There shouldn't necessarily be different shades of instructors. They're working with your students. If they are successful, your students are successful. So that ROI sometimes is still kind of that short vision that people see. They don't want to invest in adjuncts because they feel like they might leave tomorrow and that money's out the window. But the students have had the experience. So I'll get off of that. That gets me going. Provide access to the same support as full-time faculty. That goes with what I was saying a moment ago. Offer a centralized orientation and onboarding experience. These adjuncts are often pulled in late and then don't feel really connected. They're given a syllabus. Here's the curriculum. They have very little control. They have to hit the ground running, and there's not a lot of support for them. So what sort of orientation or onboarding experience could they be part of? Expand your support hours and your formats of support. So what sort of remote support can you offer? Asynchronous support. How can you have captured modules and things like that, or even on-demand support, which is what we're really leaning into with our faculty concierge program, is how can somebody ask for support when they need it at any time and be given that just-in-time support that meets them where they are with the needs that they have. So that's really critical. And so more people are trying to expand their hours as they have their resources. And then ensure he has dedicated space. We found this through a lot of people. They've said they come to the campus, but they have no space to work. They have no space to be present with students or for students to find them. They have to meet at all sorts of odd places. And it just feels like a little bit of a slight to have to just find any flat surface somewhere that they can meet with students just to be able to have a conversation. So those are some of the ideas. And I see the glance of the chat moving pretty rapidly over there. That's always nice to see. Some people sharing their experience as an adjunct. The disconnection, absolutely. Great. Matthew, who's at Sonoma State, they just had a professional development day for lecturers at their teaching center. Awesome. Most highly attended event in years. Bless you. And we know that the adjunct or lecturer population is the fastest growing proportion at most campuses. So it's really important. And
yeah,
so
we found that even though adjunct, talk about time, they really don't have time because either they're juggling multiple campuses or they're juggling other full-time work in addition to being an adjunct or whatever. They don't have a lot of time and they don't get paid, but they really value professional development and support. And that's what we found in our work. So let's move on to the last, but of course not least, persona. And I wonder if our burnt out faculty member, if there are more, I believe there are more burnt out faculty members today with the last couple of years than usual. But I think it's also shed a light on a long-term problem that we see in higher ed of under-supported and overburdened faculty. So meet Emily. Emily is a full-time tenure-track psychology professor. She's been a faculty member for 10 years and currently teaches 7 classes in 3 different formats. It's a little bit more than her colleagues. She also tries new teaching practices more frequently than most colleagues. For example, she conducts peer instruction and group activities that engage her students more deeply. And that gets to, I forget who mentioned it, about how the student advocate can become the burnt out faculty member. During COVID-19 pandemic, Emily had to quickly move her courses online, which required her to act as an instructional designer, tech support person, and videographer, as well as an educator. Emily's not alone in that. In addition, she was tapped by her dean to serve as a mentor and curriculum committee member. In addition to her responsibilities at work, Emily is a mother of two preteen daughters who are still feeling anxious and behind as a result of the pandemic schooling changes. This escalation of both professional and personal requirements created feelings of frustration and overwhelm as Emily tries to juggle many different responsibilities beyond her teaching role. Emily's greatest joy in teaching is seeing the light bulb moment when her students grasp a new concept, but she often feels like she doesn't have enough time to do everything she wants to do to teach effectively. So let's look at the factors. So some of these things that all people are feeling like they prefer the light bulb moment. If we can go on to the next one, Brett. And not having enough time, though Emily is stronger and feels it more profoundly. So 88% of burnt out faculty feel that they're doing the role of multiple roles, work of multiple roles outside the scope of their job description versus 33% not burnt out. You can see quite big differentiators, not having enough time. Her institution perceives the student as a customer, which impacts her ability to educate. She feels immense pressure to produce contributions to the academic community, and she feels underpaid. So how can you support Emily? Well, our recommendations for support focus a lot on your personal relationship that her dean, department chair, etc., have with her. Check in on her well-being, and then listen to what she has to say, and then check in again and find ways to support her. Help her with self-care support. Some institutions have programs and supports for faculty. I know a lot of institutions have heavily invested in supporting students, but not so much faculty. So for your burnt out faculty, if you want to keep them in the profession, you really need to support them more. The other thing is, we found, interestingly enough, and somebody mentioned 2-year versus 4-year, we found that 2-year faculty were less likely than 4-year faculty to become, to be burnt out. And we believe, based on some of the statistics and our experience, that some of that has to do with the fact that 2-year faculty are more connected to their calling, and they really are very oriented towards the teaching end of it, and they get joy out of that. And so you have to really help a burnt out faculty member like Emily find her original calling and find her joy in teaching and her joy in her work. And part of that is helping her to create a humanized experiences in her class and a wellness approach to teaching. So helping her to focus on her students and having empathy for them, and they will send that back to her, and that will help to give her a little bit more joy and appreciation of what she's doing. And finally, find more opportunities for rewards, advancement, specialization for Emily, so that she feels like she's not just on a wheel, a hamster wheel, and that she's got some sort of path forward. So that's our last persona and our last comment for Emily. So we just have one more thing before we wrap it, is we'd love to ask, I'm going to turn it to Brett, but we'd love to hear what you've seen. Are we missing any persona from your point of view? And what strategies have you used for supporting our different types of faculty?
So let's go ahead and we're going to jump to a Padlet briefly, and we'll get the URL into the chat, and then I'll take us there as well onto the main screen. But you'll go into your browser. So that popped in. A couple other comments popped in, so it may have scrolled up. But go ahead and jump to the Padlet, and then I'll give you a couple really quick instructions, pretty straightforward. And when you get to the Padlet, there's going to be multiple columns here, but just take a scan. So are there other faculty personae that come to mind? You can click the plus and add any of those. And if somebody has added one you really think is great, then you can jump on that and give it a like if you want to. And then those are the 6 columns that we covered over to the right. If you think there are other strategies that we missed, we'd love to hear from you. And I'll keep that refreshing, and we'll just kind of talk over. I see for the adjunct have pedagogy lunches. Okay. Yeah. Are you providing lunch or is it brown bag? That would make a difference. Just asking. Yes. Okay. So really zeroing in, I'm looking at the other faculty personae. So the postdoc adjunct. Yeah. Helping them with that transition. Pre-tenure. And I saw the comment earlier about tenure track versus tenured, different stages, absolutely, of that continuum. With tenure track, you're on that, probationary track where certain things have to happen. There's that lot of that pressure. You're tenured, you've done it, you've proven that, you've gotten your bump. Maybe you're still producing, or maybe you're kind of in that slump. Maybe you're feeling like you're not really paid attention to anymore. There can be different things in that mid-career stage as well. So that's another persona factor as well, as mid-career sometimes.
I'm glad to see that there's such a high interest in supporting the adjunct in this community here, because we think that's a really important faculty member to support, and that they're highly valuable on campus.
And then anybody having trouble with Padlet, feel free to put something in the chat if you'd like. The nice thing about Padlet is it can be anonymous, but you can use the chat if you're comfortable with that. I saw graduate teaching assistants, love that. And that can be a very large population as well, and a very significant workforce at certain campuses. So thank you for bringing that up. That wasn't part of our survey group, but there's potential there.
Yeah.
Early support, pre-tenure, great. And some campuses have a very involved, year-long program as faculty come in, and they give them very structured support, the things that they would need to be successful across that first year and going forward. So setting them up for success, that's a good investment. It helps to lower attrition. You're not having to continually recycle and rehire. You invest in someone, you show them you care, and they're going to feel more supported, loyal, and committed. Carrie, you had something?
Yeah, I was just noticing the comment. I love the comment on the expert. Ways to build research in place, establishing centers at their institution so they can bring their networked colleagues to campus, and bring the benefits of their expertise to campus population. I think that is a really key thing. If somebody really values their expertise, they're likely very, very expert and good at what they do. And, bringing that to a broader audience than just the classes they teach, I think is great, and enabling them to share with their colleagues, bring their colleagues onto campus. So I liked that.
Wonderful. Love what we're seeing here. And just of note, folks, you'll have access to this Padlet ongoing. So if you're providing support on your campus, you can come back and grab these ideas. They won't go away from you.
Yeah, it's great.
Efficient grading practices. Yeah, that's one we had mentioned early on, and that can go across several of these personae. But yeah, certainly for burnt out is how can you help them to work more efficiently, yet still effective?
That's great. And I love for the autonomist, the opportunities to pair up with student advocates to work together, gets help in connecting students. I really like that because I think you need to do it in knowing that somebody's an introvert. They don't typically get joy in large crowds, but one-on-one people can really connect. Raises. Maybe that goes across all of them. Yeah. Increased pay.
Love this. Thank you so much. Final glance here. I realize we have just a couple minutes before the hour, but we are wrapping up from here. So I'm going to jump us back. Thank you so much again. And if you want to in the chat, you can copy that Padlet, but also know that you'll get the deck and you'll get the recording. So thank you. If you have any other questions or closing comments, feel free to jump those into the chat right now, and we'll look for those. And then what we want to do is go ahead and make you aware of some other things that are happening. So this is the third in our 4-part continuum of care series, because we feel like that's really important to look at what's happening, analyze it like we're trying to do, understand it, and then try to figure out ways of providing more care and support going forward to be able to work more effectively. So we did a workshop last week, agreements for self-care. We did our burnout study back in December. We have that available to you. You had earlier today. We're going to be next looking at what's called course care. Is so how can you use the purposeful learning check to make small but powerful changes to your courses? How can you use the purposeful learning check to really dial in on just a few changes you'd like to make, and then it will understand where you are in those areas and then give you feedback and resources that meet you where you are and help you to make those next steps. So we'll be doing that session 2 weeks from today. And if you want to register, there's the QR code. And did we get that into the chat? Absolutely. Thank you. That's there for you.
Also, there will be later in the keep your eye on it. We will be also doing a session on empathy later on in the spring. And I think that's related to all of this as well. So.
And so you've got the QR and the link, but I'm going to jump us to the next slide. If any of you are out and about, we're going to be doing some related sessions at Achieving the Dream next week, South by Southwest, if any of you are able to make that one. But we do have a virtual event March 20th and 21st with the Online Learning Consortium. And that one's on breaking the cycle of burnout and charting a path for the future. So that's where there are going to be several different people featured and giving presentations around that topic. So it's not going to be just us and not us saying the same thing, but it's going to be a 2-day program around that topic. All right. Oh, Christine, that's kind of you. Good feedback there. Appreciate that. We certainly try. We want to make this.
Bonnie, yeah, it's tough. The naming the persona is really tough. We're not trying to be judgmental, and I think we're just trying to. It's a tough one, but anyway. So thanks for that. Great. Well, thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everybody.